Good afternoon, everyone. Uh, Thanks for Open Source India for giving me this opportunity to present to this audience. MOSIP and how actually uh, we have been building MOSIP. MOSIP uh, is an open source project based out of India, one of the largest projects from India. It is an initiative originating at the International Institute of Information Technology, Bangalore, and it's been funded by philanthropic capital from Bill and Melinda Gates, Tata Trusts, Omidyar Network, and NORAD. And the idea was to create a good platform which could be used globally for digital identity issuance and usage so that people can be pulled out of poverty. So the intent behind this is what has been defined by the United Nations as the Sustainable Development Goals. Those were the uh, origins of why MOSIP was built. What we have set out to do is essentially give an open platform, open standards, and open source platform for managing ID issuance and lifecycle and building trust around ID so that this digital identity can be used in daily transactions as part of the digitalization and moving the society to a frictionless modern society. We have seen this happening in India in certain areas. For example, we have Aadhaar, and based on Aadhaar, which is a foundational identity, there have been several services that have been enabled. Like, for example, a bank account opening or purchase of a SIM card, like that, many services are there. Recently, you would also have seen how COVID vaccination was also actually easily enabled to this. So while these are things which we have gone ahead and access from our side, having this identity system has also helped the governments work on benefits programs to do direct benefit transfer, financial inclusion, and so on. So this same kind of capabilities and facilities and the ability for governments to react fast in serving their customers is what led to the birth of MOSIP. And we have been trying to build this as an open source platform so that it can be globally used by any country and can be adapted to their needs. What does MOSIP do at core? We actually allow a resident to come and register themselves, and as part of their registration, their basic information as well as their core identity information is a minimal set of data is taken, and then this is processed and a unique identity is actually issued. So the identity could be physically delivered as a card or as a printout, but more importantly, a digital identity is also created in this process, which can be used. And then we also enable usage of this ID in various contexts. And this is done via the ability to share the ID credentials with people who want to verify the ID. Like, as I said, the case of financial inclusion, bank account opening, or availing a loan, those are the kind of cases where the person's identity is important. So in these cases, how does their identity get established and verified? Through either sharing of digitally signed documents or an online verification through API offered by the MOSIP server. So these are things that we take care of as part of the authentication process. This is at core what the platform does and offers. And very briefly, we were born 3 years ago, and we went to the drawing board. We had inputs from various countries that had adopted digital systems. So we consulted many of these. We had an international advisory board which came in and gave us a lot of inputs. And on the basis of this, we created a charter. And using this, About a year later, we came out in the open source with the first code drop. And then subsequently, in early 2020, we actually shared our first generally available version, which could be used for piloting and trying out the software. Since then, we have had multiple adopters. We have had Morocco as one of the first countries to opt for MOSIP. They are in the process of going live as we speak, and hopefully in some time in October, they will have their first field registrations. And then Philippines, though they came on board a little later, they were one of the first to go live, and they started operations early this year. There have been close to 30 million registrations, actually more than that, and then 10 million ID issues have already happened. And this has also enabled some 4 million new bank accounts to be opened, and this has been invaluable during the pandemic times to help Philippines actually take care of the needier section. So they have prioritized registration of the needier section of people, and this has actually created a big impact. Other than Morocco and Philippines who have gone live, we have pilots done in Guinea and one in progress in Ethiopia. Sri Lanka has actually completed a POC and they are working on their implementation plan. Togo has another country from Africa which has chosen us, and their implementation is to start later this year. These are all the adopters. So we have, apart from these, many other countries in various stage of conversations with us. Our goal was to create this platform in the open source and let these countries build on top of the platform, and we are on our way to achieving this as we speak. From a software, the platform maturity side, all these pilots and go lives have actually allowed us to learn more, evolve, and adapt to their actual requirements, field requirements, and we are in the process of coming out with our long-term support version, which should happen again towards the end of this year. Well, this has been the journey. Coming to the core topic of today, which is digital public goods and MOSIP being a digital public good and how we went about it. I wanted to just digress and ask the question, what is a digital public good? So going by my usual way of approaching things, I just try to read it as English, and which means that it has to be digital, it has to be public, and it has to be good. And that is how we actually have looked at MOSIP. And from a definition perspective, there's a Digital Public Goods Alliance which has been created. They call open source software and open standards and open data, all these which adhere to a set of principles and guidelines as actually software or systems that can classify for being a digital public good. So this is something that is picking up a lot with the United Nations as well as various development agencies looking at all digital assets actually as a common global resource which can be reused. The idea of reuse is not something new in terms of software. We all know that reuse saves us time, money, allows us to actually improve the quality and make life simpler a lot. So idea of services and software platforms themselves being a global common resource was mooted in order to speed up the development agenda across the world. And as a result, a lot of such digital assets have been identified. And there is a digital public good registry, which is also available. Right now, it has some 60 accredited goods, as well as many more which are actually in the process of being evaluated as per the criteria defined. At MOSIP itself, we have gone for choosing certain principles on the basis of which we have created this platform. And this is now essentially becoming parts of the public infrastructure in various countries. For example, in Morocco, the identity system is also rolled out along with their social benefits program. So the social benefits program will rely on the identity system, and then they have further systems which are going to ride on top of the identity as a core. And same is the story in Philippines. They are talking about social benefit systems, pension systems, the private sector, banking, as well as insurance, healthcare sectors. They have big plans using the ID as a public infrastructure. Just like in the case of India, we have our India stack, which has defined an open set of APIs. For example, for identity, we have the Aadhaar API, then we have the UPI APIs in the payment segment. And similarly, we have the national health initiatives, which are also happening in India. So all these are publishing open APIs, which form part of the core infrastructure available in a country. This, along with capabilities such as digital signatures, wallets, and other consumer as well as business department facing infrastructure components, creates a total government stack. So the creation of a government stack is something that is expected to speed up adoption of good technology to make governance that much more transparent as well as efficient, and help actual service delivery to the residents of a country much easier. Why is MOSIP considered as a digital public good? This is because on the basis of the standards, we have open APIs and we use open standards everywhere. And we also have the entire application, the platform itself, available as open source. So this allows the governments to have actually a lot more control on what they are doing with this software. And it also prevents them from getting locked into any particular vendor or service provider. It actually helps them to be more sovereign in the way they operate. And beyond just being open source and having open standards, we have also taken a platform approach. This allows the country to actually take the solution and model it the way they want and achieve exactly what they need to from this system. Right, so it allows extensibility and customizability. Another key thing, if we look at the definition of a digital public good, is that it has to do good, and this also involves protecting the end user, the citizen, right? So corporations, governments, they're all powerful. Somebody has to stand up for the individual, and these principles say that we need to take care of the security of their information, their data. We have to protect their privacy. And in MOSIP, the security of the data as well as the protection of the privacy are something that we have looked at right from the outset. So these are part of the design, and they are ground up built into the platform. So these are all some of the reasons why MOSIP has been selected as a digital public good. We are classified as a digital public good under two categories. One is being open source, and other is being an open standards for the identity space. What are the digital principles that have gone in? I'll just take a few moments to talk about them. When we created this, we knew that we are not building this for one implementation. We are building this for many countries. We needed to make sure that this is something that will work for lots of deployments with various contexts. Some of these will be real poor countries with low infrastructure and low capability. This is one side of the spectrum. And the other side of the spectrum is there'll be countries where there's maybe enough capacity locally on the technology front. The users are savvy. Upliftment is less of a concern, but ease of usage, security, privacy, these are all larger concerns. So we have a whole spectrum of people to cater to. And when we are catering to different set of people, different priorities come up, and we have tried to see how not to compromise on core concepts and provide effective inclusion for everyone. So the best practices from various solutions and systems that have been rolled out in the past, the problems that they have faced, the mistakes that have been made, all these have been factored into the design and blueprint with which we started. At the core of it, if you look at it, we are people centric. We try to be very inclusive. This is a solution built for all. It's not for one part of the world alone. It is something that is applicable in any nation, advanced or developing or in need of development, right? And we also take care of looking at the user's data privacy, as I mentioned. And as part of this, we bring in concepts like the consent of the user on the basis of which their information is used, shared, and we also give control so that the user can actually revoke the consent or decide what to share, decide how to use their ID, not to use their ID. And we build in transparency into the system so that the governments and the departments that are operating this solution can actually share information to the user on how their information data is being used, where their identity is being shared, who asked for it, was it done with consent, without consent. Everything is actually totally visible. So we have built in transparency features into the system so that external parties can come in and audit and say what are the things that need to be taken care of. Data privacy laws such as GDPR have also been kept in mind, and the principles and guidelines there have also been factored in the way we have designed the system. While we start from the users, we also know that these foundational IDs are going to form the backbone of digital transformation in various countries, right? So we wanted to make sure that it is done in a way that it factors the future in, it is cost effective, and in the control of the countries which are adopting. So that is why on the technology side we have gone for a total modular approach and something that is extensible and configurable. And we have tried to keep it technology agnostic while we have made certain choices today. The modularity and the open APIs that we have ensure that it can actually translate to becoming, you can actually replace any of these technologies with emerging technologies. You can move service by service into suitable technologies. All these options are very open. And being open source, it is possible to actually have a government have multiple approaches. They could, in some cases, we have seen some countries have formed their own teams and they have picked up the software, run it themselves and piloted it. In other cases, they have decided to engage competent parties who actually will come in and build their solution on top of MOSIP. So the choices are very much in the country's hand, and open source brings the continuity and the choice to them for them to be self-reliant. Also, by avoiding vendor lock-in as well as using commonly available technology and choosing deployment models that are friendly, we have brought down the total cost of ownership in terms of running the platform. And we have also, with our manageability features, made it low maintenance. So it is much easier to actually run this system on their own with a small team, as opposed to starting from scratch, building something or working with a vendor and having a very long drawn out plan. The options of how they want to go about are very much there, but then the saving of this money, the saving of this time and this effort means that they can focus on what goes on top, actually delivering services using identity. And in the true spirit of open source, we use open standards and we take security as something, as I said, as from the outside, we have factored that as something serious. And we have a zero trust architecture, which ensures that the data is safe from external as well as potential internal attacks wherever these systems are running. And the entire process all parts where the data is collected, moving, stored, processed. Everywhere we use cryptographic security, and all parts of the data supply chain are protected and secure. So, with these kind of principles driving, we basically take care of a lot of the problems that countries would have in establishing a good scalable system, which is going to be the backbone of their digital infrastructure. And the fact that this can be done in any country and adapting to their needs is why MOSIP has actually kind of been a good natural choice for becoming a digital public good. Apart from just building the platform, we have also built capacity around the platform. We have a whole ecosystem of biometric service providers. We use biometrics as one of the key aspects of the identity. And we also have people building supporting solutions. They are taking MOSIP and integrating allied solutions and providing total platforms for the country to run their identity programs on. And this is the selection of these companies are from Asia, Europe, the US, and even some countries which have presence, companies which have presence in Africa. While building a software with good principles, building capacity is there, our true goal is actually the impact. The goodness comes from the impact that we can create. The MOSIP vision is to create a digital future which is interoperable, highly inclusive, and that can be trusted and relied upon. The way we look at this is that at the base of it is a set of open standards and frameworks. And leveraging these standards and the frameworks, we have an open source solution, which is the MOSIP platform itself, which is built and offered. And there is plenty of components and tooling around this, which are coming up. Some of these components and tooling are being made available in the open source model. Some of these are closed source solutions. And we believe in a healthy mix of this and choice being available. Closed source solutions typically come with companies offering support. Open source solutions have models where companies offer exclusive support around these components. And on top of these components, the capstone is actually the services that will be delivered, which will be targeting the people of the country. And from a development sector perspective, social benefits, financial inclusion, emergency response, all these are known use cases which have been already taken up in various places. And from a private sector perspective, the streamlining of move from a paper world to a digital world, and all kinds of things from education to healthcare to finance, insurance. Many sectors can actually benefit from this. We are already seeing in India the kind of third-party applications that are there around KYC, payments, and all. Like this, ecosystems and services can actually be available in various sectors. We also have seen recently in India the launch of the account aggregator platform, which is opening up again opportunities for data sharing. Like this, these digital public goods, including MOSIP, form the core of the underlying standards and frameworks that actually enable these services in the digital world. Today, in India, we have seen how things have changed in the last decade or so. We were a very paper-driven country, but now we are moving slowly away from paper. And eventually in the future, we would have a very frictionless, very smooth interaction with all kinds of services. If you take something like applying for a passport or applying for a visa, the kind of checks, the kind of documents that we need to produce, and the verification, the process that happens is very heavy duty, and the number of parties who are involved are very high. We all know about the police verifications that happen. We all know about the ID proof, address proof that we need to give everywhere. And if we are applying for a visa, we have to say we have travel insurance or not. And nowadays we need to show whether we have vaccinations done for the travel. If you're applying for a job visa, work visa, then our employment records are checked, our educational skills come into check. Do we have enough money to travel and sustain ourselves during the period of the travel? So all kinds of checks are there, and these are just bound to go up. And this is just one use case. So every kind of usage scenario where an individual has to avail a service, the number of agencies who come in to interact is very high. If all of them are connected, and if all of them have open APIs, and if there are some common standards and common protocols which enable frictionless, easy integration and communication, that actually brings down the time and effort that is required in making service delivery possible. And this is the future that we are all working towards, and MOSIP also participates in providing a way to realize this future. How does this future actually become possible? So how does this digital transformation take place? The key to this are two things. One is interoperability and the other is trust. Interoperability is something we are achieving by way of open API and having stacks which have well-defined interfaces. And trust is something that comes from being able to trust the data, trust the parties who are involved in it, trust the process, and the front and center of this is actually the identity of the parties who are involved, and the identity of the individual. The digital identity is very key, and this is going to be the first key to unlock the digital future. Let me share some experiences from the process of building MOSIP. While we had very clear objectives when we went about building MOSIP, we also learned a lot. One of the things was, while we knew that we had to work for underdeveloped countries, one of the early adopters we had was the Philippines, which has 100 million plus population. So suddenly from targeting countries with 15 million, 20 million population, we needed the platform to scale for 100 million plus kind of population. While our design processes allowed us to scale, the actual operational scaling in Philippines has been an eye-opener and has given us invaluable inputs. We have, in fact, the ability to process 1 million applications a week in the Philippines. So this, at this rate, in a matter of 2 years, the entire Philippines data can be processed. And this is just the initial scale that we have achieved. And there are many more things that we can work to actually increase the throughput. So with this kind of scales, some of the smaller countries, if they deploy the same kind of infrastructure, they would be able to process their ID issuance needs in the matter of weeks or months. But it's not just about the backend infrastructure. In Philippines, we have seen how the field infrastructure has been scaled up. They have more than 5,000 agents who are out there registering people every day, and there is a lot of activity that happens to make sure that all of them can be up and running, and the system is highly available. So this is something, executing things at scale on this platform is something that we have enjoyed doing. We all know that while how to scale is something that is standard and known, every software, every platform that is built has to be stabilized, has to be scaled. So every system is like a snowflake in the sense that we can't distinguish it from one to other, but every snowflake is also unique. So every system is unique and we have to go through this process. And we have been doing that. Also, in working with close to a dozen countries, we have discovered a variety of needs and viewpoints and how they look at their social transformation, and that has actually been giving us inputs. We have had to integrate to existing systems. We have had to fine tune the processes, provide workflow flexibility. The data that different countries collect in the context of their culture and the way they operate has been very different. So we've been doing that. And then we have also had to support multiple languages. So all this plus running the pilots, the feedback that has come in, and the field trials have been very useful for us to fine tune the product and make it better. And then at the core, we have also realized that lots of our challenges are about how to take care of that individual that who doesn't fall into the common definition, right? How to ensure that the underserved are actually covered, how to manage the exceptions, how to include them, and how this solution should actually be a bridge and should not create yet another divide, which actually keeps these people out. So it's been very interesting to figure out what is the way of making sure how the last person, no man is left out, right? So that has been part of the journey that we have been in, and these learnings still continue, and the platform will keep getting better, and we hope to share these learnings also publicly for others to benefit from. How can you participate in all this and create impact? We are an open source project, you can contribute code, but we also encourage you to come and build solutions on top of MOSIP and create your own solutions on MOSIP and offer them in our marketplace. This will allow you access to building your own solutions, creating your own business, a global market that is there. And in addition to this, at the core is actually transforming lives and making the world a better place. So we welcome you to help us evangelize MOSIP and the ideals behind that, and help make the world a better place. At this point of time, I'm happy to take any questions that are there. And we see ourselves as a partner in the digital journey, and it's a journey not just of MOSIP or the countries or the adopters, but everybody, the ecosystem, the open source contributors, and all. And I also take this opportunity to thank the open source community in India. It's been wonderful in giving us advisory input, insights into what they have done and experienced. And this has been invaluably helpful to MOSIP, and it's benefiting countries across the world. MOSIP is also looking at, we are already working, we have MOSIP Academy, and we are working with various universities, and we have a lot of students actually contributing to the project. They have taken up several POCs, and they are building proof of concepts and their own repositories, which we will soon start listing and making these available in the marketplace. Similarly, various startups as well as large corporates have also come forward, and they have been collaborating with us and contributing to the standards as well as the problem solving on various technical fronts. We are dealing with very interesting problems on the cryptography front, securing the identity on mobile devices, making things work on feature phones, and so on. Thank you, everyone. Thanks to Open Source India for giving the opportunity to present. And we were able to participate in the physical events, and hopefully we will be able to do that again in the near future. Thank you all.